hide the fear. She was in danger. Moments away from death, possibly. Unless she was letting her fear carry her away. The keening wind rattled the warped walls as she quickly shoved a granola bar and the half-empty bottle of water into her pack. Why had she stupidly laid them on the remains of the shelf anyway? To trick her mind into thinking she was actually going to be safe for a few days. A mental retreat from her ragged existence. Should have left everything packed. You won't be safe until you're back in Olympia. Not a moment before. Chiding herself for her foolishness, she looped the backpack over her shoulders. Run or stay? If she could wait it out until daylight, she'd be much less likely to fall on the ice or die of exposure in the raging storm. The tiny abandoned cabin she'd found was a good 10 miles from the border of Mount Rainier National Park. But the whole area was rugged and treacherous. The volcanic mountain itself stood sentry over the surrounding valley, cloaked by ancient, untouched forests. It was breathtakingly gorgeous and deadly. Normal winter snowfall had been compounded by a vicious storm system, which had paralyzed the whole region for a week. Howling wind and hammering sleet would prevent Eli from finding her, she told herself, unless the conditions killed her first. And Eli had recruited help. 2 against 1. With meager supplies and no means to track the weather, how long would she last in the open? Once she set foot out of the cabin, there was no surety that she'd find another shelter before she froze to death. She'd made a mistake coming here. One of many. But she'd been drawn to the spot because it had been her father's favorite place to camp. A reminder of why she was doing this. Running to save her father. The ugly reality rose before her like an attacking bear. Eli Ballard was likely out there, or the accomplice he'd hired to track her, and they'd left her 2 choices. Run or die. Decisions used to come so easily to her when she'd had the false notion that she was in charge of her own life. She thought fleetingly of her PN-K-9 colleagues, tasked with assisting in the investigation of difficult crimes in Washington's national parks. She'd been so proud to be on board, even though she'd always stood a step outside the tight-knit team. Some of them, no doubt, interpreted her reserve as standoffishness, arrogance even. Still, maybe she should have turned herself in at the murder scene, trusted that justice would win out. But Eli had made it clear with the photo he'd texted that her father would be hurt if she breathed a word. Besides, there was too much evidence against her, and too few friends to have her back. And trust wasn't something that came easily to 24-year-old Mara. But they believe you now. What good did that do? She'd heard the blessed news that the team had become convinced of Eli's role in a gun smuggling operation. That Stacy, his business partner, may have found out about it and confronted him, and so he'd killed her. And her boyfriend. They were bringing him in for questioning, and he'd bolted. Now that everyone knew the handsome charmer was a snake underneath, it was just a matter of time before they could prove he'd committed the murders too. Very recently, Mara had called her half-brother, Asher, an officer with the PN-K-9 unit, and told him she'd seen Eli gun down 2 people. He seemed to believe her, but she couldn't prove anything. The wind howled along with her thoughts. Eli being a suspect wasn't going to save her now. Stuck in the snowy patch of wilderness she'd chosen, cut off from help, her enemies closing in. Mara had given her brother a hint about where she was holed up, but Asher was far away. Eli was coming for her, and he had nothing to lose. You made your bed, Mara. Now try and live to sleep in it another night. Run, she decided. But when? Could she wait for daylight to bolt? Half crawling, she crept inch by inch to the front door. The cold sliced right through the jacket she'd spent $5 on at the thrift store in Olympia. The first stop on her frantic flight from the murder scene.